what we're gonna do today, we're gonna make a little bit broader view of what we just learned, because IAM in the end is just a tool, right? So it's not like a goal. When you go to the cloud, you're not going like to use IAM. You go to build your new applications, you go to build your new solutions, and this is where you're gonna need IAM for your solution in the future. It's not like it's not a goal. It's just a tool to achieve higher security posture and like all the other things Ashish told us about. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna just share my screen and you guys tell me if you can see it, because this is not quite tested setup. So I'm experimenting on you. Great. So the first success. This is already awesome. So what you guys see here is just a recap. So we started this architecture a few sessions ago. Christel started it. The idea is like we are talking about the students who top up their cards, for their lunch at the university canteen. So they put money, and we need to just keep track how much money does each of these cards have. And then we came up with this architecture where we had authentication layer, for example, for kind of authorizing students into the system, and then a load balancer, and then we had like SSL TLS connection here. And so this is what this log kind of shows you here. And then we talked about that we are going to have highly available infrastructure, and not to get students angry because they can't top up and they can't eat. So we talked about different availability zones here, and we were quite obscure, saying that we have some database. Might be SQL database, might be Postgres database, maybe something else. I also talked about networking last time, and particularly VPC. So now what we're going to do, we're now going to just bring this idea further and incorporate new learnings about IAM, for example. And now let me present you this. And on this diagram, you can basically see the same system, but I'm more explicit now on what services am I using. So instead of just going with like authentication layer, I purposefully selected here Cognito. And you guys asked some questions which on the chat, which actually went into pretty much this direction. So the thing with Cognito, it will provide us with authentication for students. So what it means that with Cognito, you can get a pre-built UI where you can allow users to sign up or sign into your application. So you don't need them to build those, those UI components. So you'll get it out of the box, and then create different sort of visual customizations for it, but doesn't really matter for this particular session. The other thing with Cognito, you can integrate it with third-party providers. So, for example, if you know that everyone on at your university is on Facebook, well, kind of showing my age here. So 10 years ago, everybody was on Facebook. So you can basically attach that Facebook authentication to Cognito, and then Cognito to your system. So basically, they don't need to create new accounts. You can just pick up those accounts and use them within your solution. So this is Cognito. Then when users authenticate to Cognito, they will get like JOT token. So JOT token, I like our industry because it creates abbreviations which you never know how to pronounce unless you know how to pronounce. So JOT token is spelled like this, and it's basically like a sequence of characters which then the user will present to your system, and then the system can validate if the user is genuine enough. And before that, we also had like a load balancer. We were quite cryptical, or not that explicit what kind of load balancer we have. Here we can use ALB, or application load balancer. So I hope you guys had a look into those OC model or OSI, open system interconnection. And now I can just throw you this thing that there is ALB, which covers the complete, which works on the 7th layer of OC. And then there is also this NLB, which is network load balancer, that would work on the 4th layer. So the thing about ALB is that it can provide you integration with authorizer. It means that ALB will be like a gate to our system, and to verify that token the user got from Cognito, and either it will deny access further to the system, or it will then redirect on certain rules. You can also define some rules there to different EC2 instances behind it. Right, so then if we are kind of already inside the system, so we are here on that layer, here we have like a running web application. So with that web application inside the EC2, I think it was already popped up on the chat. Let me just scroll the chat. I'm pretty much sure it was already we had quite a lot of spoilers today. I don't know, maybe somebody leaked a script or something, but you guys couldn't anticipate where we're going with our explanations. Jetin, yes, you said before that it's best practice, good practice to not store the credentials directly on EC2. And that's very right. And this is where I'm also heading to. So in those EC2 instances here, you can basically assign a role to EC2 from IAM, and then from that role, in that role, you can define what this EC2 can do. Inside the EC2 instance, your application can acquire temporary credentials because they just injected into that EC2. And the beauty of it, you don't need to store anything somewhere or hard code into your application. So the rule of thumb, if you have an itch to put your credentials somewhere in the code, in configuration file, hide it in the hidden folder or something like that, think about it. If you maybe you can just assume a role. Maybe you can, if you can't assume a role because your application, I don't know, is something special, then maybe you should use something like AWS Secret Manager. You should just store it, and then your credentials somewhere are safe, and then you should just go remotely and retrieve those credentials. So if you have like an itch to save your credentials somewhere, save them safe, not next to your kind of application or code, save them in a dedicated place. Now, I've also added an S3 bucket. So S3 bucket, we talked about it. It can just store, any data objects, be it images, videos, and so on and so on. So assume here we will provide, we will save profile pictures of our users, of our students, alongside with their profile. And profile pictures need to reside somewhere. So we will just throw them into S3 bucket, and we will save them there. So our application will need to, maybe serve those images or do like resize, so people just upload 3 megabyte picture of themselves. It's too big. That should be shrinked, and we can do that inside the application, and then we can upload it to S3. So for that, the application inside the EC2 will need access to S3, and this is exactly where you can grant this access within the role. So in IAM, in the role which is assigned to EC2, you will so here the application will assume the role, and then it will have the access to S3. So no secrets stored somewhere inside your application. It will just work. Endpoints here. So we talked a little bit about endpoints already. I think people popped up some valid questions on the chat in the previous sessions. Endpoint here basically provides a way to, from your VPC, to go to S3 without popping up your traffic to the internet, but basically having like a dedicated endpoint and serving your traffic directly from the VPC within AWS infrastructure to S3 and then backwards. Now, the other thing where I'm more explicit here is this DynamoDB. So DynamoDB is basically, in this case, this is a concrete implementation of the database I picked up. And the DynamoDB is an NoSQL database, and it doesn't require you to have a VPC or to be somehow put into the VPC. So here you can also utilize an endpoint to access the database, and the other great thing about it, you can also assign. You can also put the DynamoDB into the policy and then assume this role within the EC2, so you don't again need to track those database credentials. So this is how you would use IAM in the real life, and this is somehow you see our application slowly grows and matures in some sort of way.